I'm joined by the lead campaigner and former Culture Secretary John Whittingdale, and the Remain campaigner and former Europe Minister Caroline Flint, also former energy spokesman. Very pleased with the government's announcements today.
Well, I'm very pleased, but do you know what, Adam, they actually have got the powers to do this already, so I'll be making that point later this afternoon at the statement.
Now, John Whittingdale, should we now be switching to a, well, if you're not going to play with us, we're going to prepare for a hard Brexit and no-deal Brexit and making that work?
Well, it also always seemed to me sensible that we should have that option available to us. I want to get a good deal out of Europe. I think, as the British Chambers of Commerce said, you know, we shouldn't just regard it as a bad outcome for us if there is no deal. It would be an extremely bad outcome for the rest of Europe. But it will help to, I hope, deliver that good deal if they can see that we are serious, that if we don't get the right deal, then we will take the alternative option of walking away.
And is Philip Hammond a traitor for what he said yesterday?
I mean, Philip Hammond, his job is to flag up concerns to the economy. I think the Treasury could be a lot more positive. I want to get a good deal, but I think leaving the European Union is going to be good for this country either way, and I think that the Treasury needs to accentuate the positive as much as it does, identify potential problems.
I mean, you rebelled to back the government in the recent vote on this. So do you think it is time to start being more positive about planning for Brexit?
I'd say two things, Adam. First of all, I think all talk of walking away with no deal is nonsense. There will be a deal. There has to be a deal, and that's what we should focus on. And in focusing on what that deal should be allows us to then talk about, well, what are the sort of things that we want to carry on doing with the European Union, and what other areas of policy can we do in a different way because we're leaving the European Union. And all this chatter and brinkmanship that's going on here, let alone brinkmanship going on in Brussels between our negotiating team and theirs, I don't think is helpful. And therefore, I think this sort of rising voice in the last week about, oh, you know, we should walk away and with no deal, I think that's really unhelpful, and I don't think it helps us to move forward.
Do you think we should consider no deal there?
I think that we have to have it as an option. I've always believed that one of the ways in which you get the right deal is to persuade the people you're negotiating with that you don't want to do a deal at any price. I mean, if they think that we'll pay any price, then of course the price goes up. If we say, yes, we want a deal, it's in our interests, it's in your interests as much as it is in ours, but there is a price beyond which we're not prepared to go.
You see, I think that's the wrong way to look at it, John, if I may say so, because I think we have leverage in other quarters, whether it's on security, whether it's on our trading arrangements, our relationships going forward. You know, it's not an easy time for the EU at the moment anyway, as we know. So I think there's a lot of leverage we already have at the negotiating table for EU nationals that are here, for what's going to happen between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. We don't have to talk up no deal to have strength, and that's why I feel it's a very male sort of waving banner type of thing going on here, which is this sort of brinkmanship.
It's the Prime Minister who's doing it.
Unfortunately, she's going down that route. Maybe she needs to step back, because the problem for her is she did this Florence speech, which I thought was really helpful moving forward, and now it seems in the last sort of 10 days she sort of seems to be going back on that a bit because of Brexiteers who are saying, oh, come on, let's, you know, thump the barrel a bit more.
But, I mean, if you basically say we will do a deal, that isn't that tantamount to saying we'll accept whatever is offered, even if it's a bad
because
deal?
we have a huge amount of leverage on our side in other quarters. I've already mentioned on defence, on security, on policing arrangements, the fact we have obviously EU nationals here as well as Brits overseas, as well as, let's be honest about it, the continuing need for good relationship when it comes to trading. Now, I believe that talk about, you know, look, let's just say we're going to walk away, I don't think that is the right tone to set. I think the public want us to get on with it, and that's why I supported the government at the EU withdrawal bill. But they also want us to get down to the detail of what that deal should be, and that's what we should be talking about.
It does look a little bit as if, as you said, we had the Florence speech, we had a cabinet meeting, there was an agreed position, but now elements in the Tory party seem to be pushing, with support from some in the media, towards, well, why don't we really think seriously about a no-deal Brexit?
I want to have a deal. The Prime Minister wants to have a deal.
Do you accept that there are others in the party who are trying to bounce the government in that direction?
Well, I mean, the first thing is we have to accept that it is possible that a deal just cannot be reached. Not necessarily because we fail to agree with Michel Barnier, but I'm Vice Chairman of the Exiting the EU Select Committee, and we heard yesterday from a very senior ECJ former judge that the European Court of Justice at the end of the day could veto the whole thing. So it's got to get past 27 other countries, it's got to get past the European Parliament, it's got to get past the ECJ. I hope that can be done because I think it's in their interests to do it. Yeah. But we should at least consider the possibility, but it can't.
But there are some people who are saying, look, this is all going to be frightfully complicated. It's not going to work in the end. Why don't we just start planning the other way? You'd accept that there are people in your party who are saying that.
What I would say is that a lot of the so-called planning for a no deal is things that we should be doing anyway.
I agree with that.
Things like new technology at the borders to make it easier for lorries to go through without having to stop.
Land, building,
and all of these things, we're going to, the majority of our trade is going to go on increasing outside of the EU. It is outside the EU that the real growth is taking place. We should be making it easier to do those new trade deals with all the other countries.
I mean, should we be doing more than earmarking 250 million at this stage?
Oh, look, I agree with John on this. I think when it comes to our border control and the mechanisms we have there in tackling immigration, but also, obviously, what is coming into the country is really important.
But building lorry parks, is
well,
that a good idea?
to be honest, I don't think we spent enough on immigration and our border services full stop. So regardless of us leaving the European Union or not, we should have been doing that anyway. But I think the problem here is that you have, extreme Brexiteers, I'm not saying John is one, who love to talk up this no deal. I actually think that plays into the hands of some of the, if you like, ardent Remainers who want to sort of talk up how this is going to be a disaster. Let's get onto sensible ground here. There will be a deal. There's leverage on both sides. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of what that deal should be.
Now, we don't think we're going to get there today, though.
No.
Maybe at the end of the year. But if we're not on to negotiations in the round by the end of the year, is that the time to pull up stumps and say, look, we can't agree, we haven't got time to agree, we're going to have to plan for a hard Brexit really seriously?
No. I think we should focus the attention on the steps that the progress is being made. I think probably there's quite a lot of talk outside of the negotiating room on both sides, which is up in the ante, if people understand that phrase. I'm sure they do, your viewers. But actually, I think it's quite serious work going in those negotiations, from what I understand. We have to keep on track. Everyone has got an interest in this, our EU friends as well as ourselves, to make sure we try as far as possible to get this right.
Do we need to set a deadline to say, look, if we don't get anywhere within the next few months, then actually we've got to start looking at it the other way?
What I do think we need to do is get on to stage 2.
If we don't,
that doesn't mean we need to have concluded stage 1, but we need to at least start
If we
talking.
don't, do we have to be prepared?
Well, if we don't,
say,
then obviously it makes sense that we should start preparing very seriously for that possibility.
Should we declare that, do you think?
Well, by the end of the year, I would like to see at least the talks on stage 2 on our future arrangements having begun. If they haven't even started, then I think we should be making that alternative provision. I think there is a case for doing it, as I said earlier, but right now anyway.
I mean, there is, if you're haggling over a carpet, people say, well, you always want to walk away.
Well, look, at the end of the day, of course that is an option. But the problem is that this debate and the sort of polarisation of views on the Leave side and the Remain side, I think, at the heart of all this, most of the British public, whether they voted Leave or Remain, want to feel that the government's getting on it. Now, all the polls indicate that 2-1 people are against having a second referendum. People are wanting the government to get on with it. But I have to say, other polling is showing that they're worried about how this is being managed. And that's partly, I'm afraid to say, because of the infighting that's going on in the Tory cabinet, let alone on the Tory backbenches. And I just think it's unhelpful. We need to make sure that we get the best deal we can. And I just think there's a different way to use our leverage rather than just threatening to walk away.
Do you think that the cabinet is damaging, really, Britain's negotiating stance, because there is so clearly this division, Boris versus Philip, if we want.
Well, I think one of the problems is that the intensity of the scrutiny from the media every single day into every nuance of every utterance.
Issue, isn't it?
Well, of course it's a big national issue, and I don't criticise you for devoting a section of your programme to it every day. But there is a desperate desire on the part of all the press to interpret every comment to try and find a wedge that they can drive between different members. I don't think that's terribly helpful.
But you couldn't honestly claim that the Conservative Party is united in its approach to this issue.
Well, I think what the Prime Minister has achieved is on each occasion that she has set out her position, first at Lancaster House, then in Florence, actually the whole of the Conservative Party has said, we completely support that, we're behind you. So on the general objectives, I don't think there is any difference. There may be a slight debate taking place about the extent to which we should emphasise the positives or the negatives, or the extent to which we
there are
begin
people going
bearing.
to party conferences and saying this is like Waterloo and Agincourt.
Well, I don't think that's right.
But that's what they all say.
Well, there is, of course, a
That's
debate taking place in all parties about this. I mean, I don't think Caroline's party is exactly united on their approach to Europe. It is the big national issue, but the one thing which I think is clear is that the whole party supports the objectives as were set out by Theresa May in Florence.
Well, I mean, I think obviously the media are going to report all this, and it's all about the nuances, but to have to say they've been given plenty of material by the Conservatives in the past few weeks, and on it goes.
Yeah, but as you say, I mean, you voted against your party's whip, so you...
Well, I abstained on it. I didn't, you
Yeah.
know, because I wouldn't vote against the second reading of the EU withdrawal bill. But, I mean, the Labour front bench is clear. Keir Starmer, Jeremy Corbyn have said we accept we're leaving. We do support transition arrangements, and I've said that for the last year.
I still don't know whether you want to be in the customs union or the single market.
Well, actually, if you want to read Keir's article in the summer, he said a new relationship with the single market and the customs union, not the same. So he recognises it cannot be the same if we're leaving the European Union. But this is about the devil in the detail, about the negotiations, and I think it would help us all if we could actually have some discussion more about that and what that could be, rather than deal, no deal.
OK, we will leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.